forms, but I've seen both in the program and on the blog the statement that it's not a fusion of those various influences, but a conversation between them, an attempt to find meeting points. Can you tell us a little more, explain what you mean by that? What the difference is between, what would be the difference between fusion and conversation?
Well, in dance terms, the concept of fusion is that you meet with other dance disciplines and you pick up moves that you learn. It's a vocabulary, it's a choreography that you pick up and you do, and you try to imitate as much as you can to the original art form. Or sometimes you mix up things, so you might have contemporary legs and Kathak hands, or contemporary hands and Kathak legs, or it becomes a confusion. And what happens is that not that I mean, this is a very personal opinion. A lot of people are doing fusion, well, it's fantastic. But for me personally, I feel that if somebody is trained in a particular art form, like contemporary dance, and then you're asking them to do Kathak requires the same amount of training, if not more, to be able to do what one is required to do in that style. So to just say to a contemporary dancer, right, can you just do this movement and explain the principles and then just let it happen? That is not honest to me, because the information in that person's body is so different. Their cultural awareness is so different. The feel of the movement is so different. So it's very difficult for them to understand what would be 100% hardcore Kathak. So rather than making that happen, what interests me is how we as society, as people, we conversate, we dialogue. People come from different parts of the world. We have different accents, we have different vocabularies. We may speak English, but we actually have a different diction. We have different ways of defining things, or have different ideas about things, but we still communicate. And it's that interesting mode where people still are able to speak. For example, I'm using English because that's the easiest. People are still able to use English as a language to understand each other, but have different ways of expressing themselves. So it's that notion. And I was speaking to a psychologist about how sometimes we pick up mannerisms. And I was even trying to explain to the company, because they're like, well, what is fusion then? Then what is conversation? What is dialogue? And they were really beating themselves, what is dialogue? And having to get them to even speak through their choreography, you have to be able to communicate, have a conversation during your choreography, so that the movements derive from there. And it's interesting that I know it took time for them to understand. It's not a very simple concept. But what happened was, we actually started to pick up mannerisms of each other, just when they communicate, and they just, that's right! I say, apparently, isn't it? And so they started saying, isn't it? But it just happens because you're with people all of the time, day in, day out. You're likely to pick up something or another, whether it's the way they talk, whether it's the way they look, whether it's the way they sit, stand, and it's that absorption is what is manifested in the choreography and in the musical discipline. So it's that a change, apparently it's called change by association in psychological terms. And that's what we do all the time. So that's the concept of dialogue.